Macmillan Audio presents The Last Flight of Poxl West by Daniel Torday. Read for you by Aaron Abano.
For Aaron, Abigail, and Delia. The bomber will always get through. British Conservative leader Stanley Baldwin during a parliamentary debate, 1932. Acknowledgement. Prologue. Before halftime on Super Bowl Sunday, January 1986, my Uncle Poxl came over. He was just months from reaching the height of his fame, and unaware the game was being played. He wasn't technically my uncle either. He was an old friend of the family. For years, he had taught at a prep school in Cambridge, where my grandfather had served as a dean. After a massive heart attack a year after I was born left my grandfather as much a memory to me as thin morning fog, Uncle Poxl came to fill the void. That Sunday, he sat down in the living room and, speaking over the game's play-by-play, started a story he could barely clap his gloves free of snow fast enough to tell. A miracle had occurred that afternoon. His neighbor had died a few months back, and though my Uncle Poxl was consumed with the details of the upcoming publication of his first book, he'd advised the neighbor's sons on the handling of the estate. The neighbor was an obscure literary novelist who'd enjoyed acclaim early and then none. Their father had left nothing more than his immense library and thousands of dollars of debt from a mortgage on a house too far in arrears to sell. Uncle Poxl had become immoderately involved in figuring a way to help them, though it wasn't clear what expertise they felt he could lend. Decades ago, he'd quit a job at British Airways to take a PhD in English literature. Then later, dropped his dissertation on Elizabethan drama to finish what would in time become the successful memoir of his time-flying Lancaster bombers for the RAF. Maybe they assumed that because he had owned a number of houses and apartments, he had a certain familiarity with ownership. Maybe people just assumed from listening to his confident tone that my Uncle Poxl knew what he was talking about. He was falling behind in grading for his classes, and in the early spring he would hit the road for his book tour. But something hadn't let him give up his neighbor's case. Then, today, Uncle Poxl said, as Steve Grogan missed a receiver with a pass, the deus ex machina. I had no idea what he meant at the time. I was barely 15, and what mattered back then were the Patriots and the Red Sox, a girl named Rachel Rothstein I was after in my Hebrew class, who couldn't have cared less for some wizened British war hero. But that Sunday, I was too drawn in by his unerring voice, its dry gravity and utter self-belief, not to find out what happened to his neighbor's sons. Somehow, his voice had found the only register that could drown out the game's clamorous announcers. Willie, the youngest son, asked me if I'd help pack, Uncle Poxl said. He figured he'd give the books away. Poxl had noted my eyes on him now, not just my parents'. The volume of his wry voice rose perceptibly. We were a dozen books in when I dropped Saul Bellows' Herzog. I picked it up, and a crisp 100 fluttered to the ground. Willie and I looked at it like it was a rabbi on a football field. He looked at me. The Bears scored. I missed the play and the replay. Julian had used $100 bills as bookmarks in every one of his books. He'd get paid $200 a review and put half back into the books. They hadn't counted it all yet, but there must have been near to $100,000 in those books. He didn't write a review every week, but he wrote for that paper regularly, and others. Maybe he thought his sons would find it all. Willie doubted it, and I did too. We were a pile of cardboard boxes away from handing his estate to the Harvard Co-op. Uncle Poxl kept talking, hauled along by the wonder of the thing. I'd rarely seen him so animated. This was the first time we'd spent alone with him since he'd finalized copy edits on his memoir, and his appearance at our house
Sample complete. Ready to continue?